This podcast has been brought to you by Voyager's World. We are building the most amazing hospitality network.
Jan, did I say your name right?
Hi.
How you pronounce it?
That's right.
Jan?
Yes, Jan. Jan. Jan.
All right. Well, thank you for coming to this podcast. I appreciate that. And for the people that are watching and don't know about you or maybe don't know about me, tell us what have you done?
Well, I seem to have gotten myself in with a group of really fantastic people, I guess, that walked across the United States.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, actually there are several ways that you may end up in this podcast, and one of them is that we are putting together this book, 27 of us or so, and about running across America. And you are one of them. So when was your run? Tell us about that.
I did it from March 1st, 2016, and ended October, I believe it was the 8th, 2016.
March. Took you 6 months.
So I'm actually, yeah, 7.
7 months.
I think it was like 7 months and 8 days or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And from where to where?
Oceanside, California to Ocean City, Maryland.
To Maryland. And you did that during summer. And
Yeah, it was very hot that summer. There was a lot of different weather, large weather formations that came through that year, and one of them, when I was going through Texas, it was pretty hot. I think the highest day it was like 110 or something like that. So we definitely had some warm weather in the middle, yeah, for sure.
did you do that with support vehicle or no support vehicle? Or how did you do it?
No, half of it I did again, get about the midway point of my little place called Floydada, Texas. Half of it I did on my own. I was pulling a cart behind me. It was attached with a hip belt. I didn't push a stroller or do a backpack. I had a specific cart that I pulled behind me with 2 wheels. And then when I had some issues, physical issues with overuse, and also I had gotten sick back in New Mexico. And it came to the point to where I was either going to have to stop or figure out some other way to continue. And so about midway through Texas, I called my husband and had him come out. And he didn't crew. I call it Sherpa'd. I did everything like I normally did every day by myself, pulling my cart, all my gear, and all that other stuff. But if I weren't able, because the towns aren't spaced out, where you can get to sometimes. And so I wouldn't have to stay out in the weather, whether it was hot or cold or rainy or the tornadoes were coming through at that time. He would make sure that I actually got inside in a hotel or motel each night if I couldn't make it to it. Otherwise, all he did was, he rode around all day, and wherever we were supposed to meet up, that's where he would meet up. But he didn't actually crew me. He was just kind of out there to make sure I got inside if I couldn't get that far in a specific day.
And during summer, if I was doing it, I think what would make me suffer the most is the heat, and that's the only reason actually I decided to do it during winter, because I thought, you know what, I can deal with the cold a lot better than I can deal with heat, especially if you need to camp and you don't have a chance to take a shower and put clean clothes on. It gets really miserable.
It does.
So how did you deal with that?
It does, but Actually, the heat wasn't the issue. It was an issue for, a few days,
Mhm.
but as far as like lasting for a long period of time, no, it really wasn't. Although it was over 100 for probably 2 or 3 weeks, especially when I was in Texas and Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
Um, my problem mostly was I came through that area where the heat was that area it had major flooding. And the bigger problem were the mosquitoes. It was terrible.
So you were telling that the mosquitoes were a major problem.
Yes, definitely,
Uh,
definitely. They just had such a terrible floods in Texas that year, and there was water everywhere, even though it was really hot.
mhm.
And the mosquitoes, by the time I came through, the mosquitoes were terrible. I mean, they were swarming. You couldn't stop for literally more than 5 seconds. So the mosquitoes actually bothered me more than the heat.
Mhm. And before we get to non-technical questions, I want to get some technical issues out of the way first. Some technical questions. So one was you mentioned that you had a cart that you were. It was a cart that you pulled behind you, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All
Yes,
right. Uh, is that how you did it the entire way?
yes.
Okay. How was running with that? Did you try at, while you were preparing? Did you try any other method to compare?
No, I didn't want to use a jogging stroller because I wanted my hands free.
Uh-huh.
And the company where I got my cart, it's from the Netherlands. It's actually called a Camino cart.
Hmm.
And I researched quite a bit. There were actually some people, there were some companies in the United States that made something similar, but this one just looked good. And also the tires were solid. They were
Uh-huh.
bouncy, but they were solid. So I knew I wouldn't have to deal with flats and things like that.
Yeah.
It was very lightweight. It would hold up to 100 pounds, although I'd never put that much on it. It was it even had a brake, a little hand brake on it, which I thought I would use a lot more than I did, but I didn't end up using it much, except for when I was standing at red lights, I'd put the brake on and lean back and kind of
Uh-huh.
rest against the cart.
Uh-huh.
But no, it worked perfectly. I could once you got used to it, you didn't even know it was there. Um, I didn't carry a whole lot of stuff. I think both everything I had without water on it, it would probably weigh maybe 30 pounds or less. I had it perfectly balanced, which was very important. But you didn't even know it was back there unless you were going up a hill, and then yeah, you kind of know it was back there. But it was flawless. I could
Uh-huh.
run. I had my hands free. I could turn on a dime. I mean, it was absolutely perfect for me.
It sounds interesting. I never tried one of those, but I imagine because I used backpack
Hmm.
in one of my transcons and I used the stroller on the other one. And the stroller was easier to run with than
Hmm.
the backpack. And I'm imagining that your system would be even easier then.
Well, it's just like not having it there. You're just pulling it behind you, and it pulls so easy that the wheels on it are they're made for racing wheelchairs, is what the company told me. So
Uh,
they're very efficient. And I didn't even hardly wear the tread out on the tires up for but did 3,000 miles, and these tires still look new.
how
They have
system like that?
do what?
How much does it cost?
I think it was about with the exchange rate. It was less than a one of the high dollar chariots. I think it was less than $800, but it had to be gone through customs and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I think it was less than 1,800, so it was less than buying a chariot or a bob.
Mhm.
Um, and the maintenance to it was zero. I mean, just zero. It was perfect. And then when I had to go in someplace, I just either pulled it in behind me or I'd take it off, the belt off, and just roll it in like a hand truck.
Mhm.
So
That's really interesting. I'm going to um, I'm going to ask you to choose a few photos for me, so I can
Okay.
put them. I will put them on the video, and so we have some images of it.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So in logistics, usually I like to say that usually there are three ways. There are three ways of doing this. That's what we call a supported run, in which someone has like a van, a truck, or one or more persons helping along the way, the entire way. That is unsupported, which is when you're going along, and there is nobody helping. There are some variations in between, right? But then to
Mm.
me, there is a third way, which is network supported, when you connect to a lot of people along the way. And and I'm wondering how it was in your case, if how much you could meet with people, get them to help you or get them to support, and how was the story that you were telling them? Because they'll keep asking similar questions all the time, and we end up developing a very good explanation to why we are doing it, because they always ask, and how we are doing it. Right?
I really didn't have, I thought I would have more support along the way, with people, staying in their homes and houses and things like that. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had only a handful of places where we had what I call homestays. Most of my overnight accommodation in my hammock tent
Mm-hmm.
or in motels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as other kinds of support, none, not really. I mean, unless you, I don't really consider when my husband, because he really didn't help me that much.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his job. He really wasn't supposed to. And if you know him, um, putting that kind of responsibility on him makes him terrifically anxious.
Yeah.
So um, wasn't, it was support but not support. I guess it's kind of like your hybrid
Mm-hmm.
scenario there.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have a lot of support as far as going from place to place, to like from people to people. um, the only, I mean, of course everybody would come up daily, and they would stop along, the road angels would stop along and they would ask questions, and they would always ask, why are you doing this, are you doing it for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
the common questions.
Yeah.
um, and and yeah, you get, the same I've, said the same answer seems like 9,000 times, but I
Mm-hmm.
never got tired of it, because I figured was, when the people stopped and they cared enough to take their time out to stop and talk, then it was up to me
Uh-huh.
to, take my time with them and explain to their satisfaction, you know, what they wanted, what they were curious about.
Yeah. I
Thing.
don't think we get tired of explaining, but we get efficient. We start learning how it
Yeah,
is that we say it, that saves times and explain it the best.
right.
Uh, for instance, I discovered when I was doing it the second time that if I told people that I just decided to do it, I just like um, I was not doing it for any cause the second time. I was doing it
Hmm.
for to help an orphanage the first time, but the second time it was just because I decided to do it, right? And that was a lot more difficult to explain. Uh,
Yes, I can
people,
imagine.
it would generate a lot more questions, uh,
Hmm.
and a lot more incredulity. You could tell that people were looking at you like, huh? And they
Yeah.
did it. Like you are not doing that for to cure anything, to save anything, and no, no, and it caused more trouble in the sense
It
of trying to explain it. Uh,
Yes, it does. They almost expect you to be doing it for some cause.
yeah,
It's almost expected.
yeah,
And I have friends too that have done these things, and they just do it basically like you said for your second one. You just wanted to do it for the enjoyment of it or whatever personal,
hmm
thing. But people almost, it's almost expected that no fool would be out here doing this if
Right.
they weren't doing it for a cause.
Uh-huh.
And but mine, I actually, you're right, you get very much more efficient at telling them, because if you start actually telling them the too much intricacies of it or too many details, they glass over and you lose them. So I got very efficient in telling them in 2 sentences, basically what was going on, and then they'd say, "Oh, okay," and they got it.
All right, let's pretend that we are right there on the road and I am someone that just stopped. And I'm asking, so what are you doing and why are you doing this? What is your answer?
I'm doing it for the September 11th National Memorial Trail Alliance, and it has to do with 911. And as soon as I would tell anything, they didn't hear about the Trail Alliance,
Uh-huh.
but all you had to do is basically what I eventually did down was I was doing it for one of the 9/11 charities,
Okay.
and I didn't
They
even
will
have to
understand that. Yeah.
explain.
Yeah.
And once I started doing that, then everything was much easier
Uh-huh.
to communicate them with. All you had to do 9/11 charity, and though it was something having to do with 9/11 charity, it was a little bit more detailed than that. But once you
Mhm.
started telling them that, then you were in.
Then the
You were
conversation
in.
flows. Right.
That's right, and that's one of the reasons why I picked. There were certain criteria before I picked the charity,
Uh-huh.
and that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and picked that one, because it had to be. There was three criteria. I'm trying to remember them. One of them is that it had to be recognizable no matter where I was in the country. There was a local charity that I really wanted to raise money for, but if I'd told them I was doing that, they would have no idea, and it was only local. And if you're in Arizona, they don't care about what goes on in Tennessee. So it had to be something nationally recognized. And there were certain other criteria, but that was one of them. And anything 9/11, everybody can recognize.
But you did that in 2017, correct?
2016.
16. All right. But why? So in general terms, and we are back to us here. So, but in general terms, why did you choose that? What was your personal or your conceptual connection to that?
There was none.
Mhm.
And the whole story in itself, and I'll shorten that for you. I was looking, like I said, I had certain criteria that I wanted to meet. One was the recognition of nationwide. The other one is they had to have a good rating on the charity side. So I didn't want someone to uh, have a terrible efficiency rate.
Uh-huh.
And there was one other one, I think. Anyway, uh, I I narrowed my list down to about 10 charities.
Uh-huh.
I went to all of them, and basically they said, "Oh, that's great.
Uh-huh.
Send us the money when you get it, but we're not going to help you promote it." And
Uh-huh.
I told them every one. I said, "Well, that's crazy." I said, "The more we promote it, the more you promote it, because I have no footing. The
Exactly.
more you promote it, the more money we can get. Therefore, the more money, and you'll get more money." Oh, we can't do that. And they had all kinds of reasons why. To me, were stupid reasons.
Okay.
And I was like, but that's not what I mean. I'm going to advocate for you. I'm going to do free publicity. I'm going to do, I'll go in, I'll talk to schools. I'll do whatever I want, no charge to you. And we can try to raise money for your cause and whatever. Every one of them came back. And these was some of them were larger, some were small, some were medium was my short list. And every one of them came back that way. And I thought, I
I
don't
have.
want to, if I'm for a call,
Mhm.
if I'm going to do it for a cause, I have to, number one, believe in the cause, and number two, if you're not going to help me, what does it do to help you?
Yeah. I
So
I
I
did.
actually almost get
Yeah, I did some shopping on charities as well. When I was preparing for the second time, I was considering doing that for a charity. And when I dug deeper into it, I got the impression that most of them are just collecting money. That's not. They don't do anything. They collect
Yeah,
money,
they
and
don't
then
care.
they pay for their overhead and the offices and the SUVs and whatever else, and then whatever is
Yeah,
left up
it
to
was
a
very sad.
bare minimum, then they give it to whatever cause it is. But I didn't see much passion
Right.
or involvement in most of them. Um, and I
No, it was
also,
very sad, and I almost actually gave up and decided not to use a charity.
yeah,
But one day I was sitting on Facebook, and there was an ad came up for this September 11th National Memorial Trail Association. I got, curious about it, so I went in there and looked at it. Very, very small organization, no paid staff whatsoever.
mhm,
I sting it. It does have a 9/11 component and whatever. So I contacted them, and they were just floored that anybody would even
mhm,
want to help them. And they said, sure,
mhm,
we're small, we don't know what we can do, but sure, we'd be happy to have you do it. And that's how that came about. Um, I didn't raise as much money as I wanted to, but we did raise some. And the main thing on that particular charity, they wanted awareness. They want people around the country that it's actually being done, so that they can have more awareness with Congress, and because it has to be approved. This particular trail has to be approved by Congress.
uh-huh,
So that they wanted money, yeah, but they really embrace the awareness part, which I had no trouble doing.
uh-huh.
And so that's how that came to be.
Very cool, very good. So you now let's change to something that is not so technical that I like to ask about, which is what kind of person were you before versus after? What changed in you, or what did you what changed, and was it the way you expected?
Well, I had a little bit of experience with journey runs because I'd done the Ball State run.
Mhm,
Um, Granted, it's only 10 days, but it's a
mhm,
long way. It's 10 days. You have to fend for yourself.
mhm,
That's kind of a little microcosm of a transcon. So it's some semblance, but and I kind of knew there were things because I knew enough people who had done it and friends and stuff. I kind of knew sort of what to expect. I didn't know how it would affect me, but I knew what to expect, and that didn't make it any less difficult. I'll tell you that.
yeah,
Um, it was tremendously difficult, and it's very hard to explain to anyone except somebody who's done it how difficult it is.
yeah,
Um, but the change, and I like to think I've kind of held on to that. The
mhm,
change from before and after, um, I I I'm more patient now. Certain things don't bother me as much. I mean, my friends kind of giggle at me now because I tell them all the time, I can go sit and stare at a tree for days on end. It doesn't bother me one bit. I don't have to be entertained. I'm okay with my own company, kind of a thing.
mhm,
Not that I was, over anxious or anything before. I was pretty chill before then, but I got you get used to being by yourself, and I like having the people around. I tend to be an extrovert, but after I got back, I actually would rather not be around people as much.
mhm,
Um, I like being by myself more now. Not that I don't, like being around my friends, but I'm just more comfortable just kind of going, coming, and doing, whenever I want to, however I want to, and that
mhm,
kind of thing. Because when you're out there, you have to, for a successful crossing, you've got to learn to be comfortable with your own company.
yeah,
And that sounds easy, but it's definitely not. And so many people that try the long distance runs, that's why they, kind of what they get into is they can't make their own entertainment in their head. And when they can't, they get so bored because it is infinitesimally boring, boring.
Yeah.
And at least until you get across the Mississippi River. And even with you've got people stopping sometimes and talking to you and stuff, it's boring.
Hmm.
And I don't think humans were made for boring. I think in time now we have so much interaction and overstimulation with social media and stuff like that that
Yeah.
it's really hard for people to kind of grasp that. But I really embrace it now. It's wonderful. I just love it.
I I imagine that if someone cannot really get immersed on his own thoughts and as you say entertain yourself with your own ideas, then yeah, it's torture. And also, if you don't prepare yourself to be sure that you will keep doing it no matter what, if quitting is an option, then you have a part of your brain that is so well prepared to convince you to stop. And
That yes.
the smarter you are, the smarter the excuses are going to be. So I like to joke that this is easier to do if you are dumber, but you know,
Definitely.
yeah, you can just entertain yourself and not think about it so much. But the part that is most difficult for me to imagine is, as you said, sometimes you explain things, but you don't expect people to understand them unless
Hmm.
they did it too, right? Well, there are two things that I didn't do. I didn't do it faster, and I didn't do it slower, right? So when I talk to someone that have done it at 50 miles a day and finishing 6 weeks or 8 weeks, it's very difficult for me to comprehend that. But it's also very difficult for me to comprehend the routine and the effort and the psychology of someone that did it over 7 months. Because I'll tell you this, I did it in 4 months and a few days, and both times were about the same. And I have a lot of trouble imagining that because after 3 months, I was absolutely exhausted of it, like psychologically. I felt that I prepared well and I could do it and I finished, but the last 3 weeks or so were really tough.
Uh,
And
y- yeah, I
let me
understand
know.
that part. My ending point, I actually had sort of two ending points because of my charity. Their official ending point was at the 9/11 memorial at the Pentagon,
Okay.
and they had a group meet me there, and that was kind of their little celebration for their charity. But I wanted to go ocean to ocean, so I continued on, and my personal ending was Ocean City, Maryland, because
Uh-huh.
I wanted to, go into the Atlantic Ocean. So that was another 179 miles. And actually, after I did the little soft finish, I call it, at the Pentagon, it was
Mhm.
kind of anticlimactic. That last, and I had to slow down because there were people coming to meet me at Ocean City, and they couldn't get there until the following weekend, which means I had to slow way down because in order not to get there too quickly.
Uh-huh.
Because 179 miles, I could have got there in about 5 or 6 days, about 7 days, and I had to spread that out. So it was it wasn't boring getting there, but I had to slow down. It was like, I don't know. The end was not the celebration that I felt it was going to be. It was kind of, okay, I'm here. There's the water. Take the picture. We're
Mhm.
done, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the difficulty was more mental than physical by
Mhm.
then. I had physical problems then,
Mhm.
by then, for sure. But the more difficult parts were uh, the first half. Actually, even before I got to 1,000 miles, those were most difficult because I was out in the desert part mostly, and just it was so desolate out there, and
Starting from the
those were
west,
more difficult for me.
yeah. Starting from the west is brutal because you
Yeah,
start and a week later you're in the desert.
yep,
No, you're not even used to it yet, and
yeah,
you are in the most uh, intimidating environment,
yes,
of the
exactly.
and if you're doing
You
that during summer, then you have rattlesnakes and you have scorpions and and
you know what?
mosquitoes.
Everybody asked me about that too, and only snakes I saw were dead ones in the road. I never saw a live snake the whole way. No scorpions, no what. I actually didn't see very much wildlife. A few rabbits, some deer,
Were you on the
and
side of the road all the time, or did you take trails as well?
I was on the road 99% of the time.
Uh-huh. I think I did about 5% trail, maybe a little more, because I found several trails to do along the way, especially through the desert. So I was away from the road several times, and I was happy. So going through pure open desert, and I was very happy that it was winter because I didn't want to
Yeah.
encounter, to have an accident with a scorpion or a rattlesnake,
Hmm.
which can be, you may not die, but it's not going to be a good week.
Not it's not comfortable. The second night, the second night on the thing, I was already back up into the mountains there in California,
Uh-huh.
and there was a utility maintenance guy. I stopped on the side of the road and I was talking to him, and he gave me some water from my water bottles and stuff. And he said, "Now you need to be careful up in here because I've seen mountain lions." And I'm going, "Okay." So I knew I was going to have to camp out
Uh-huh.
on up the road there, and I was kind of, that was my first night in actually out in my tent, and I was kind of wary of mountain lions. I mean, when a mountain lion comes up,
Uh-huh.
but and it made a great picture and a great story, but no, I didn't see a lot of wildlife actually, and I don't know, it was just because the road is hot and they don't get out in the hot road or whatever. But
Yeah.
I saw no venomous snakes at all, period.
Okay.
And even when you had to go over in the bushes, invariably. But I saw no venomous snakes at all, and every other ones of them were all dead on the road. So
Uh-huh. I was more afraid of cows, well, bulls, especially long bulls, longhorn
yeah,
bulls,
yeah,
and stray dogs. Stray dogs were were concerning a few times, but nothing. And if anybody's watching
I
this
only had I
and
have
considering doing it, you have to remember that the greatest danger is drivers by far.
absolutely, absolutely. I only had a couple of encounters with dogs, and one of them was while their owner was holding the dog back. The dog, if he'd have let it go, it would have chewed me up. And the owner was standing there, the dog pulling the owner across his yard, and the owner was saying, "Oh, he won't hurt anything. He's this," and the dog's name was Angel,
Angel.
and Angel would chew me alive if the owner had let go of his collar, because he was dragging her across his yard at me. But I only had a couple of those. Yes, by and far, uh, traffic vehicles were the main danger out there. People weren't danger, animals weren't danger, cars, vehicles, absolute danger.
Yeah.
That was one of the mentally fatiguing things for me, because there were some days where there was no, and you had to be on alert constantly. And by the time you get to the end of the day, when you're having to be laser focused like that, mentally you're just completely wrung out.
Yeah.
It's complete exhaustion up in your head. So definitely, and I had a couple of close calls with vehicles.
Mhm.
Um, I had an aim straight toward me
Yeah.
in a truck, which was surprising because mostly the transfer trucks, the professional drivers actually were pretty good.
Yeah.
But I had one aim right toward me, and I know he was aiming toward me because he was looking at me and he was smiling. And
Uh-huh.
then I had a couple of others where, of course, I always walked against traffic. But I had a couple others where it'd be on 2 lane roads and there'd be a car passing, come up on, actually on my side. And I don't know if they just don't see or whatever. And they came close enough to me. One of them in Virginia came close enough to me that my hand rag swiped their driver's side door
Wow.
as they were coming by at about 60 miles an hour. That one I had to stop a minute and kind of regather myself because
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was side door clean.
Wow.
And it was just ridiculous. I mean, the ones that did that and they passed, it would have taken them 5 seconds to wait until that other car got passed, and then they could have passed, and it wouldn't even been any issue.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was just crazy.
Yeah. Now, definitely the greatest danger, and I remember that between 2011 and 2014, 2 or 3 people got killed doing this. They got hit
Yes, and then the year,
by vehicles.
yep, they did. And
Yeah.
then the year after I did mine, of course, Mark Balmer got hit up in just in northern Florida.
Hmm.
I had followed him a little bit. He had already done one in 2010, and he was doing his second one, and he got hit up on I think it was Highway 19 up in northern Florida.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that case.
So yeah, they have a movie out about him now, or it's a documentary. It's Mark Balmer. It's Baumer. I believe. They have a Facebook page for him. He was a young fella. He was a bit of an activist, kind of really quirky,
uh,
but he was kind of fun to watch because of his quirkiness. But yeah, he got plowed over up in. That was really sad too, especially since the charities he was working for. But there's some of them got hit that didn't kill him, but and like Thomas, or not Thomas, Nick, Nick, of course, he got hit up in Columbus area. Of course, he's fully recovered now, but gosh, if everybody sees the pictures of him when he first got hit, you'd never think he would have ever recovered.
hmm
And it's just from crazy drivers. So they don't pay attention, and
I think a lot of
I
people
think
are driving on Ambien and other drugs, or they are on. There are a lot of drivers on lack of sleep, and then they take energy products. Yeah, they can drive, they produce, but they are not really there. They are not 100%
right.
there.
They're not they're only in their own little world, and they can't they're in their own little bubble, and they don't see
Yeah,
things around them.
exactly.
So I know it's a sad situation right now because I still have damage to my feet and my right ankle from my walk. I do bike riding now than I do walking or running. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing in the bicycling world nowadays. It's very dangerous to be out there. But that was the most danger because that almost inevitably people would ask me, especially being a single female out there by myself, aren't you afraid of being, I don't know if they watch too many movies, raped, kidnapped, whatever. I said, well, when you go along in your normal, daily life, are you afraid you're going to get raped or kidnapped and we're just walking down the street? And invariably they'd say no. And I said, it's no different.
Yeah,
You need to be vigilant, but you can't be afraid of every stick and twig.
yeah,
So and I was very fortunate, and most crossers are, even if they're female, they rarely have incidents with human interaction that are dangerous. I
yeah.
had none. I
I,
had none.
I
None.
advise,
Period.
yeah, I advise a few of them, and some of them are my friends now, and the story was always the same. It's like you learn to to take some decisions. You're careful with some things. And but no problem really. Uh,
No,
some people
no.
have, especially if when they are asking questions, usually the question is coming out of their mouth before they actually had an opportunity to sit down and think about it
Right.
and try to simulate in their heads how things would happen. So they ask you a question
Definitely.
that the question itself is uninformed. So sometimes I explain to people, well, if you're going to think about danger, you have to look at what are the probabilities of something happening. And in that case, the concern with traffic is definitely number one. Is the first, the second, and the third concerns are traffic, cars, and
Exactly.
I would say stray dogs would come next. To me, that's more likely.
Yeah,
It's not. It's probably not going to kill
definitely.
you. Maybe not too likely to kill you, but it's very likely to get you badly injured.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I
People are way people are people are way down the list.
way
Really.
down.
I mean, you take regular precautions. I'd take regular precautions as if I would in a big city or something like that. I mean, you don't go and do stupid stuff. I had overall wonderful experience with everybody. I had no bad experiences, and there were some here. And we've got our book coming out, with the 27 authors, but
Yeah.
I've also got a one of just my personal about just the walk that I did.
Mhm.
And there were some situations in there where, any sane person would have questioned, why I went ahead and trusted someone I didn't even know.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I'm being looked out after or whatever, but every one of them turned out to be a wonderful experience with wonderful people that basically just wanted to help.
Yeah.
They had no ulterior motives, and it worked out great.
Yeah. I have a rough count of how many people I interacted with during my first walk, and it was around 700 people along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So an average of 6, 7 a day. And I
Mm-hmm.
can remember of one that was hostile. Let's call it that way.
Right.
Hostile, not aggressive,
Right.
not
But,
violent. They didn't have a chance. But
right.
but
Right.
I could tell that if I don't walk away, this is going to escalate.
Well, some advice, and it's good advice for anyone, and anybody should know it. But one piece of advice, actually two pieces of advice. The second one's kind of funny now, but B.J. Timonor gave me.
Mhm.
He said there's two rules. He said be nice to people even if they aren't nice to you. And the second rule was don't ever turn down free water.
Mhm.
Uh, the second one's funny now because some days I had so many people stop. I had no place else to put the stuff they were giving me. I had water
Yeah,
bottles stuffed in every nook and cranny and everything, and the cart was getting heavy.
yeah.
So there was a couple of times that I actually politely refused, but there was a couple of times that I remember that a couple of shopkeepers got a little short with me, and I never lost my temper with them. That was the one other thing too. Now I since I've got back, I can't say I haven't lost my temper, but while I was out there, I didn't care what somebody said to me or if they were short or whatever they were that day. I was nice to them. I didn't, fire back or do anything like that. And even those couple of shopkeepers that were really short with me, when they saw that I wasn't defensive with them, they softened up. And by the time I got out of there, we were big buddies.
Mhm.
So my attitude did it sort of dictated their attitude once they saw that I was not gonna, I was not intimidating to them or anything like that. So that worked in my favor. So that's one of the pieces of advice. I can't say that I always, am able to do it even when I'm back. But if you're nice to somebody, it's hard for them to be mean back to you.
Uh-huh. And what about your own family and friends? Did you have much trouble dealing with them before and after?
You have to know my family. They all told me I was crazy and stupid and that kind of thing. I mean, they always tell me that you're not going to be able to do this. And this is normal. It's
Uh,
nothing. It's nothing
Regular
abnormal at
family
all.
so far.
Regular family.
Regular family.
every I've done enough crazy stuff that they say, you're crazy. You can't do this. You can't do this. Whatever. Why do you think? What are you thinking? Whatever. Although they all followed me all the way across. I can't say that they weren't worried. I had better luck out of my friends because again they're used to me doing crazy stuff. Again, I'm sure they were worried, but my family's all the time telling me I can't do things,
Hmm.
and I say, so what? It's normal.
Uh-huh.
Um, I know that they were proud of me. You could tell by the way that they have talked about me during and after. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's kind of normal for
Uh-huh.
me. Um, I've not led a very conventional life,
Uh-huh.
um, and so they're very much expect that from me. So that was the situation with
So
them.
when you are not going around walking like a crazy lady on across the country, what do you do? How is your life?
Um, you mean before and after?
Yeah, no. How is your
Yeah.
life in general? Like, what do you like to do? What do you occupy your life with?
Um, I like outdoor stuff, of course.
Mhm.
I always been an outdoors person. Back when I was younger, I did team sports, basketball, soccer, things, softball, things like that.
Mhm.
Hiking in the mountains. My happy place in the whole world is the Smoky Mountains. So I like hiking in the mountains. Um, but I've done some unique stuff. I worked for a time as a contractor in overseas, and I was able to travel to many different countries and things like that. Totally enjoyed it. Of course, it's easy to enjoy when somebody else is paying for it.
Right.
But I've not been conventional. Uh, I When I married my husband, he had a company, and when we got married, we sort of took that and grew that exponentially. Um,
Mhm.
and the company, it was a landscape company, so there was a lot of out of the box thinking with that too. And so, we 2006, I believe, we sold that company and expected to retire. Very young. I was only 47, and we expected to retire, but things happened in between there with his health, and we weren't able to retire. So I had to kind of go out and do, what I could do, and we traveled around a while in an RV. We worked on the road and lived in an RV for 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
So a lot of unconventional things, but I've always loved traveling and I've always loved the outdoors. And
Mhm.
that's just a theme that's always been there. So this cross country thing, doing it on foot, of course, at 2 miles an hour, is
Mhm.
quite the immersive experience. But being out there in the nature part was really, really exciting.
Mhm. When I when I had my first experience, I redesigned a lot of my life because I had enough time to think about everything that I like about my life and also about every mistake I made and everybody that I disappointed and everything that I thought I was falling behind. And many of those things I realized I had an opportunity to correct.
Hmm.
Uh, so I changed my behavior in some points and changed my business. I definitely changed the way I deal with people. Uh, so I could say that I finished changed it enough that people notice that. People that know me, they notice, oh, you're talking different now. You are, or oh, your decisions are different. You know,
Hmm.
some people said that I had a different accent, which is weird.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm wondering if it was like that with you, like if you change the way you do things that are outside of the walk, especially regarding business or dealing with family. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I have. Like I said, I you get back in it. it takes a while. I still, it's been 4 years, I guess now. I still am not sort of reintegrated into real society. I don't think
Uh,
there's still issues there. I knew those would happen because of doing some long-term stuff before. I mean, I'd done the Ball State, of course, like I mentioned, but I'd also done big events like Ironman, things like that. And usually what happens is you have so much emotional energy balled up into this endeavor
mhm,
that once it's over, it's almost like a drug crash, and you have no place to put that mental energy, and you go
uh-huh.
into pretty, most people go into a pretty deep depression.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to happen, um, just from experience. Now, the longer the journey, the longer it'll last, usually. And even now, 4 years later, I still feel effects of that. Um, it's, and I wouldn't say it's a depression. It's more of a sadness,
Mhm,
um, just for things in general. And sometimes it makes no sense about what it is.
mhm,
It's hard for me to, I used to love to be in crowds and things like that. Now I really don't like that.
yeah.
Um, I'm not, uh, uh, it- it's not a place I like to be. Um, Things like that. Whereas before, the extroverted part of me was fine with parties and crowds and things like that.
So it
Um,
increases the distance between you and the common people.
yes,
Mhm,
it did that, but on the other hand, I guess on a more positive note, I tend to listen to people more.
mhm,
I'll sit because some people, they just wanted people to listen to them, and I
mhm.
had so many people that stopped me on the road, and all they wanted was that
Those are the
too.
fun ones.
So I had to listen to people more. Yeah, sometimes you don't have to say a word. You can just sit there and let them talk. And I tend to do that more now than I did before. I think that's a remnant of being on it. But
Mhm,
I don't know. There's a sadness there. I don't know if it's missing. I do it, although I don't think I would ever do another one again, just because
mhm.
it's hard.
Yeah, I know.
Plus, I don't have the money anymore.
I know.
But it's hard physically, it's hard mentally, and I don't know that I'd ever try it again. Although in my head, I could think, well, I could, go out and go across the state or do something like that.
Mhm,
But I I do miss it, even though I know I probably will never do anything even close to that anymore.
mhm.
I do miss it,
I miss
and
being on the road, but I like to do different things, So I tried in 2016. I went to Spain and I did the Camino de Santiago.
hmm
That was fun because it's all trail. You are rarely on the road. Most of the time, it's trails through farms and through the
yeah.
wild. So
Some friends of mine and I are going to do that in September. We're going to do the English way
the
in
English.
September. Yeah, the Camino Inglés from Ferrol to Santiago.
Oh,
Yeah, so a group of ladies and I are going to go do that in September. That's the plan if they don't kick us out because of the 19th. Uh,
uh-huh.
that's what our plan is. So and I actually had to be that's an odd situation too. The friends of mine that are going, they wanted to do it for their 60th birthday year, and they've been bugging me about it for a long time, and they like me to organize their trips sometimes,
Hmm.
and so they just and I just basically herd the cats, and they just go along with what I do. So they're all wanting to go, and I don't really want to go. I mean, even now, I don't really want to go, but I've got to thinking about that, and it's not that I wouldn't enjoy it. It's
Hmm.
just that the Camino is a pilgrimage
Yeah,
in general. That's why people do it, and for some of them, it'll be the only kind of a pilgrimage type of thing they ever do for their whole life.
yeah.
And I've already had that, so I don't need, it's a need for them. I don't have that need for that introspective pilgrimage like they do, because I've already done mine.
Uh,
And so we're going to go, and I'll enjoy it, but I have need to go whereas they do, because they really haven't had their time like that yet.
when people ask me about El Camino specifically, I like to give them two pieces of advice. It's nice to put that in this video because other people will watch it. Uh, the first piece of advice is that if you're going with friends or family, I suggest that you don't walk together, that you go a few minutes separate.
Right. Exactly.
So you're not doing the entire thing talking to the same people the entire time. And also, if you are talking
Exactly.
to a relative every day, all day, by the end of El Camino, you hate each other if you don't already. It's too stressful. But if you do it separate and you meet at the end of the day, you just agree on which one hostel you will meet at, right? When you get there, you have different stories to
Mhm.
tell. You saw different things, and
Mhm.
you have different notes to compare, uh, which creates some interesting conversations. And also, you're creating a tiny bit of isolation
Yes.
that you can enjoy every day,
Mhm.
right? In worst
Yep.
case scenario, if you need to talk to someone, there is always a stranger nearby to talk to, because there it's so many
Right.
people
Right.
doing at the
No,
same
no,
time.
that's great. That's great advice. Yeah.
And the other
Everybody that
advice,
ever go
yeah,
ahead.
the other advice I like to give is that uh, instead of getting a big backpack, get at most a 33-liter backpack. At
Right.
most, ideally a 24, which is the smallest backpack you're going to find for, and make it do with just that. That
Mhm.
means you will not carry any camping gear. You will not carry computers and three chargers and two phones and five cameras. None of that.
Right.
I
Right.
said, and don't even use the fucking phone. Just don't do anything. Bring
Mm.
bring one book. That's it. You know,
Yep.
don't bring tour
Oh, I won't even be
guides.
bringing that.
Yeah, don't bring tour guides. Don't bring a lot of books. Don't bring a lot of electronics. Just look
Mhm.
around because El Camino has, if you have experience doing pilgrimages or transcons, first of all, it's too easy, and so there is no physical challenge. So make it a perception challenge. Guess if you can discover, for instance, especially if you're doing that in August or September, that's harvest time. You can eat
Mhm.
fresh grapes and apples and pears, and you can get so much free fresh food out of the tree along the way. And there are many little rivers and canals and things that you're going to cross where you can take a bath in the middle of the day. It's amazing the number of things that you can discover,
Mhm.
find along the way, can be really entertaining. So
Yeah.
it's not a physical challenge. Then I mean it is, but not what we are used to. So make it a
Well,
perception challenge. And
for me, it's not going to be. I don't think. Of course, we never know exactly, but for me, I don't think it's going to be that much of a mental or a physical, because it's ours is only going to be 6 or 7 days. We're not going to do the big long one. We're only doing the about 73 miles,
uh,
so we can get our Compostela. But
mhm,
for them, it's going to be a great mental challenge, because they haven't done any kind of a multi-day thing, and I'm trying to prepare them for it. Again, your excellent advice about the small backpacks and those kind of things. But in the end, it's their thing, and we will all be going our own paces, and which that means we will spread out for sure,
mhm,
and hopefully have experiences with other pilgrims along the path. And so I mean, I think it'll be great for them. For me, it'll kind of be just, a week to walk.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I love the scenery of Europe. I've never actually been to Spain. I've been to other European countries, but I've
Uh-huh.
never been to Spain. So this will be something new for me, and I'm going to enjoy it for sure. But I
You'll
will
really like
probably
it.
be getting something different out of it than they do.
Yeah, I like it a lot. The tiny villages, where you
Hmm.
walk in and you can see the village from one end to the other, and you can ask around and you discover a tiny restaurant that, with
Hmm.
two tables, and they make
Yeah.
amazing food, for the
And the
pilgrims. And they are
people in the little villages are the best.
Yeah, and they are used to the pilgrimage. They are
Uh,
they're used to seeing us, so they are completely comfortable with us. They are
yeah.
like the stray cat that you're always feeding. It doesn't run away
Yeah.
from you anymore, right? So,
Yeah, that's a good analogy for sure.
exactly. So they are used to us, and they are used to treating us really well.
Mm,
That's their livelihood. And
yeah.
those tiny hostels are awesome. I
Mm,
really like that. There's a lot of, I don't know if you know the history of it, that most of those hostels are very old, but
mm,
because of the recent regulations, because of the EU, and also because of they notice the that it is profitable, a lot of these hostels modernized. So
mhm,
some of them look like an IKEA store today. They are really good, uh, but they're still cheap. It's like 10 euros, or 5 euros,
mhm.
some of them. There are even hostels that you can stay for free if you arrive
Yeah.
early. So it's very accommodating, very easy to do. And that's why I tell people, don't bring camping gear, don't bring a big backpack. You don't need any of it. You need your passport, your wallet, and a bottle of water. Everything else
Yeah.
provides, and the
Right.
clothes.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And so what are the plans now? What are you going to do
Uh,
other than
well,
that?
the Camino.
Mhm.
I've like I said, I've gotten in more into mountain bike riding, gravel
Mhm.
riding on my bike. Um, let's see, 2 years ago, I completed the Cross Florida Individual Time Trial, which is really hard, very hard.
Mhm.
Those kind of things, multi-day bicycling rides. I have a friend who has been doing some of those with me. I've done the Great Allegheny Passage and C&O Towpath, and we're going to do the Ohio to Erie this summer.
What,
I was
what
in a
state do you live?
do what?
What state do you live?
I live in Tennessee half the year and in Florida the other. So
Okay,
right now, I think you're in Miami. You're in Miami, right?
Miami. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in Jupiter.
All right.
Uh, we're in North Palm Beach County.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're down here as snowbirds from January to May, and then from May to December, we're in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Knoxville is home
Okay.
to me. So that was one of the real treats of my Transcon too. I got to walk end to end from Memphis to Bristol on the old most of the old what they call Route One. Was the original road across Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
So it was 600 miles tip to tip um, to when you go across Tennessee, and I was able to walk right to my front door, to my parents' front door, to my mother-in-law's front door. That was pretty. That was pretty, neat.
Yeah.
So that was great. Um, but just mostly right now, I'm doing bicycle stuff, long distance, multi-day bicycle stuff, and I'm really enjoying that. My right foot has not recovered from my Transcon, and I get problems with it after about 6 miles. So the Camino in September is gonna be an issue with that. But
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to walk through it. I'll do it fine, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get out and do much running or really, really, really long
Mm-hmm.
distance walking any because my ankle bothers me so bad.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little concerned with that, but I recovered. I recovered all right. I didn't have
Well,
any problem.
thankfully, my right hip has recovered, but my ankle, anything over about 6 miles, my ankle swells really bad. My right ankle still swells really bad.
Uh,
And so I don't know if it's going to stay that way or what, but I'm not going to stop doing stuff just because it does. I
uh,
just try to find different stuff to do so it's not as bad as it could be. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, and you got to strike while you've got the time and the energy and the health to be able to do stuff like that. And so that's what I'm doing, trying to stay as active as I can, doing
uh,
things out in nature
uh,
uh, until I fall over and can't do it anymore.
yeah. Well, if you are, I go to Kennedy Space Center sometimes to watch the launches. And next one that I'll be going to will probably be by the end of this month.
Hmm.
So send you a message. If you're around, I'll stop by for a cup of coffee with you. That would be really great if,
Okay,
if we have a
sure.
chance.
We live within just a stone's throw of US 1 there in Jupiter, Cuesta,
Cool.
on Jupiter Island. So I've met up with a few people coming through there. I met up with Noah and and his dad,
Yeah.
John Price, and a couple of others when cause if they're doing the East Coast, they
Uh,
usually come down US 1 or go
yeah.
up US 1.
Yeah. Jeff Zabrowski is right there in Jupiter, I believe. I think he's your neighbor.
Is he?
Yeah, I think he's in Jupiter or very close to it. And
Mm.
super, super nice guy. He came here to Miami to visit me a few days ago, and I visited him in Phoenix, I believe. I think it
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, when he was still living there. Uh, I met with, of course, with Noah and Robert and Noah. Um, I met a few others, and some I just talk online. But this is a
Hmm.
very interesting club. It's like I compare with being musicians. You know,
Yeah.
musicians they may not like the same kind of music, but they all appreciate each other's love for music, right? And
Hmm.
even though
Yes.
we are so different, we are such a diverse group, but we have enough in common because of our experiences.
Yep.
That
Definitely.
it's interesting. It's really good.
And this group that's in the book coming out on the 15th. I mean, gosh, I'm so honored to be in that group. I mean, there's some heavy, heavy hitters in there.
Yeah.
Uh, even just having Gary Cantrell, Lazarus Lake, for any people who don't know who Lazarus Lake is, his real name is Gary Cantrell,
Hmm.
from the Barkley fame. Having him in there, although, the, since 2015, except for my um, Transcon year, I've been the meat wagon driver for the Vol State, and this year I'll be the meat wagon driver for Vol State and his new race, the race across the heart of the South, I think is the name of it. So he
Hmm.
and I are very well acquainted. But there's some heavy hitter people in. We got Pete and Sandra,
Hmm.
and I mean, not to mitigate anybody's journey, but gosh, there's some very famous people in this book, and haven't read all the way through it myself. I've only read parts of it yet,
I
but what I've read is really good.
Yeah, no, I didn't read any of it on purpose. I want to wait until we publish, and then I'll get the book and I'll read it. You
Hmm.
know, I'm holding back on that. I want to get a one fresh one shot through that. Yeah, I'm
Well, I'm hoping to be able to get one myself, and a hardback, and just for myself, and take it around to everybody and have them sign it.
yeah, that would be cool. Oh,
Yeah.
Jim, thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Well, it's a good talking to you, Milton. I've seen you around. We've been in our, friends. I like to tell people, I have a lot of friends who live in my computer.
Yes.
You live in my computer so far. So yeah, great to talk to you. And the book is great. I'm so glad to be a part of it. And thank you're in there and everybody that has participated, and it's gone really
Yeah,
pretty well consider 29 people.
yeah,
We've gotten along pretty well. So
yeah.
I think it'll be hopefully be a great success. And
And on this
we're
podcast, yeah, on this podcast, on the description, I'm going to put a
uh
link to that book, and I'm going to put a link to your book as well. Because people may
okay.
we want to.
Mine My personal one fall, but because I'm still working on that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's I can give you a link to my I have a Facebook page if you want that.
So,
I
yeah.
can give you that later, and then I'll send you a picture of the cart, a picture of the thing. There's actually a picture on the I believe it's on the American Crosser,
Mhm. USA Crossers.
Cross America on Foot
Uh-huh.
website or not website, Facebook page.
Yeah.
There's actually a picture of me with the cart on there, and there's a picture in the book with me with the cart.
Cool.
So yeah. So, but yeah, it's been great to talk. Yeah, hopefully we can get together as a group sometime and kind of swap stories and pat each other on the back and see each other. But yeah, it's been great.
All right. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
All right.
Bye
All
bye.
right. See you later. Bye.
We hope you like this podcast as much as we like to produce it. This has been made possible by the efforts of dozens of volunteers, supporters, partners, and visionaries that are helping us build Forager's World. Please visit our website,